If there's one thing I remember about my father, it's how supportive he was of me throughout my life. After my mother was killed in a car accident when I was 6, my father raised me as a single dad. Although we were quite wealthy because my dad was a record producer, he remained very involved in my upbringing despite his busy schedule. I admit I was not always the easiest kid to manage and we went through our share of nannies, but my dad was a strict disciplinarian and kept me on the straight and narrow. Despite being strict, he was always fair and allowed me to pursue any interest I had as long as it was legal. Growing up, I was very interested in sports and tried out one year for a spot on the football team. Now, the chances of my making the team were slim and my father knew it. I have always been a small, skinny guy, and as I look back, I would probably have been better suited for some other sport that involved less physical contact. In spite of this and his lack of interest in sports, my dad spent all of his free time practicing with me and getting me ready for tryouts. Even though my father was more interested in arts and music, he was still a pretty athletic guy and would play the occasional pickup game with me or take me to Lakers and Dodgers games. With his help, I got a spot on the roster as a kicker, but only got a few minutes of playing time when the starting kicker was injured at the end of the season. In my senior year of high school, I got my girlfriend pregnant on prom night. Her parents, who never really approved of me, kicked her out of the house and stopped communicating with her. Soon after, they moved away without leaving her their new phone number or address. Fortunately for both of us, my father took her in and even supported her through college after the baby was born. While my grades weren't good enough to get into a good college, Ella was an athlete and honors student and graduated with her pick of colleges. She ended up going to UCLA in order to stay close to home. I took some college courses online, but mostly I was a stay-at-home dad. My father loved being a grandfather, and when he wasn't working, he would spend as much time with my son, Peyton, as possible. Life continued on like this for several years. Since my family had a lot of money and Ella found a well-paying job after earning her MBA, I continued to be a stay-at-home dad. We also got married during this time in a small ceremony with our closest friends. As my son grew older, I began to realize he wasn't like the other boys his age. He didn't let us cut his hair, he liked wearing dresses, and he enjoyed playing with dolls and pretending to be a princess. All of his friends were girls, and when I tried to get him to play with other boys his age, he would shy away. Luckily, we lived in a pretty liberal neighborhood and the neighbors seemed to think such behavior was fine. I, however, felt uncomfortable by my son's feminine behavior. Growing up with the name Courtney, which was a family name, I was sometimes teased at school for having a girl's name. While no one seemed to be judging him now, I wasn't sure what kind of life he'd have once he started school. The parents in the area might be accepting, but it's hard to tell how his fellow students might treat him. For this reason, we decided to homeschool him for the first few years. Thinking this might be a phase, we thought we would wait for him to outgrow this before enrolling him in school. When I was 25, my life took a tragic turn. My father, who had never been a very healthy eater and would enjoy the occasional drink and cigar, suffered a heart attack and passed away a few months later. I was heartbroken and forced to continue my father's company on my own. Not knowing much about the industry, I hired professionals to run the day-to-day and only made occasional visits to ensure the company was being run correctly in my father's absence. During this time, I mostly stayed at home, grew out my hair, and grew a beard. My wife hated the beard, but knowing my pain put up with my sloppy appearance. Also, we began to realize our son may not have just been going through a phase. When he turned 9, he asked for a princess party with princess makeovers, and he also began showing interest in the son of the lesbian couple that lived down the street. I often found them on play dates together playing house. My son would play the wife and hold the boy's hand and kiss him on the cheek. While I didn't have anything against people who were gay or transgendered, I never expected my son would be possibly one or both. While Ella didn't seem to mind, she could tell I felt somewhat uncomfortable whenever I saw my son acting girly or kissing the neighbor boy. One night in early October, when Peyton was 12, Ella and I discussed our Halloween plans while lying in bed. "So, Halloween is coming up and I have to go out of town on business again," Ella said. "Do you think you can take Peyton to the Halloween party?" "Yes, I suppose," I replied while watching SportsCenter. "Did he already pick out his costume?" "He did," Ella replied hesitantly, "and since I won't be able to take him this year, he was wondering if you could dress up with him instead." "What does he want me to dress up as?" I asked, turning my attention away from the TV. "Well, since he's dressing up as Dorothy, he was wondering if you'd dress as Glinda," she replied. We actually got the costumes before I knew I would have to go out of town. The Glinda costume is kind of sexy, but not too revealing. "I don't know," I responded. "I've gotten used to the fact that Peyton likes to dress like a girl, but I think I'll find a scarecrow costume or something instead." We went to sleep and I didn't think much about Halloween again until a few days later. While watching some family videos, I began to think back to all of the things my dad did with me. Watching him in the videos, I could tell that while he really didn't share all of my interests, he was always there to support me. I also remembered how Ella's relationship with her parents had strained, and I never wanted to make Peyton feel the same way. Having my dad's support gave me the confidence to keep on trying even when I felt like giving up. When Ella got home later that night, I sat her and Peyton down and told them I would wear the Glinda costume. Excitedly, Peyton ran over and hugged me and my wife smiled at me. We made plans to hire a professional makeup artist to help me get ready and Ella would help me get used to walking in heels. I could also tell that Ella was relieved I'd finally shave my beard for that night. Over the next few weeks we began preparing for Halloween night. Ella ordered custom prosthetics for me to wear with my costume and I had my body waxed, which hurt like hell. I have to admit it did feel nice have a hairless body, but I wouldn't go through the waxing again. I also practiced walking in heels, putting on makeup and nail polish, and trying to act and talk like a woman. My wife left a few days before Halloween and I spent the next few days practicing with Peyton. Having not spent a lot of time with Peyton recently, it was nice getting to spend some time together. Peyton seemed very natural as a girl and had even become quite pretty. While we didn't allow him to wear a lot of makeup, he was pretty good at putting it on and I could tell he'd been sneaking lessons from some of the older girls in the neighborhood. "Dad?" he asked hesitantly as we got ready a couple days before the party. "Yes, son?" I responded. "I know you aren't really comfortable with all of this and are only dressing to support me," he stated, "but do you think we could spend a day together as girls?" "I suppose," I said, "it will save time having to get ready before the party." The next day, the makeup artist came over and helped me attach all of the prosthetics, styled my hair, and helped me with my nails and makeup. She would come back again before the party, so she helped me with a more casual style for a day as a woman. Peyton complimented me on how I looked and asked me if she could invite Dylan, the neighbor boy, to spend the day with us. Since Dylan would be seeing me as a woman at the party anyway, I agreed to let him come over. I was wearing a casual dress that ended a few inches above the knee with a pair of heels so that I could get more practice in before the party. Peyton was wearing a pair of short denim shorts and a tank top with a pair of flip-flops that showed off his painted nails. We both had pretty feminine bodies and features, and anyone who saw us would think we were just a pretty mother and daughter. It was a bit of a blow to my ego that I looked so much better as a woman, but I decided to just go along with it and enjoy getting to know Peyton better. When Dylan came over, he hugged Peyton and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Peyton took his hand and led him over to me for a proper introduction. While I had known Dylan since he was born, Peyton wanted to properly introduce him as his boyfriend. Having seen this coming, I responded courteously and Dylan nervously told me that I looked very pretty. I thanked him and we went to the kitchen to have some lunch. As I watched Dylan and Peyton together, I had to admit they made a cute couple and that Dylan was a very nice boy. I learned that Dylan was into sports and was learning to play the guitar. I wasn't sure if he was attracted to boys or if he viewed Peyton as a girl, but I decided not to press the issue at the time. After lunch, Peyton convinced me to take them to the mall. I hadn't left the house dressed as a woman up to this point and was nervous about how I would do in public. Peyton told me I passed very well and that I would do fine as long as he called me Mom and I referred to him as my daughter. Reluctantly, I grabbed one of Ella's purses and packed it with my cell phone, keys, some makeup, a pair of Ella's sunglasses, and one of Ella's wallets packed with my license, some money, and my credit and debit cards. Since my name is Courtney, I wouldn't have much trouble using my cards while dressed as a woman. When we got to the mall, Peyton and Dylan walked in confidently holding hands. I, however, was more cautious until I realized that everyone seems to think I was a woman and even caught several guys checking me out. By the time we reached the first store, I was feeling more comfortable and soon felt like a mom out for the day with her daughter. As the day went on, I watched as Peyton picked out and tried on different clothes and shoes and tried them on for Dylan and me. At times he would ask me my opinion on stuff, and despite my lack of knowledge on female fashion, he seemed to like some of my choices. After buying some stuff for him, they convinced me to buy a few things for myself. I knew I would never use any of it, but since I was the same size as my wife, I could give what I bought to her. I ended up buying a couple dresses and skirts, a few blouses, a swimsuit, several styles of shoes, and a few things from Victoria's Secret. Throughout the day, people would tell me how pretty my daughter was and that I was a lucky mom, or that my daughter was lucky she got my looks. I thanked them and I must admit the compliments felt pretty nice. After shopping for several hours, we went home and changed into our swimsuits. Dylan put on a pair of swimming trunks and Peyton put on a one-piece suit that was appropriate for a girl his age. My suit, however, was a two-piece that showed off my feminine figure and left little to the imagination. My prosthetics were very realistic, and with my long blonde hair I must have looked like some kind of model or actress. We continued to refer to each other as mother and daughter, and Dylan called Peyton his girlfriend. I began to realize that Peyton might be transgendered, but I would not pressure him to make any decision until he came to us and discussed it. If he did decide to get hormone treatments and permanently become a girl, I would be proud to have him as my daughter. We spent some time at the pool and ordered a pizza for dinner. When the pizza came, I momentarily forgot how I was dressed and gave the delivery guy quite an eyeful answering the door in my swimsuit. As I paid for the pizza, I could tell the pizza guy was nervous and trying not to stare at my body. Nervously, he made his way back to the car and almost tripped as he turned back to check me out one last time. I admit it felt kind of nice knowing I had that kind of power over men as a woman. As a guy, I was never really one of the cool kids and wasn't very lucky with the girls before I met Ella. The only time I was popular was when people found out who my dad was, and even then they weren't really that interested in me. We ate the pizza on the patio by the pool, and soon after Dylan said his goodbyes and went home. After he left, Peyton asked me to watch a movie with him, and we changed into our sleeping clothes and Peyton climbed into bed with me. While watching one of Peyton's favorite romantic comedies, he fell asleep next to me. I turned off the TV and fell asleep next to him. The next afternoon, Peyton woke me up anxiously and told me that the makeup lady was there. I went downstairs in the tank top and shorts pajamas that I was wearing, and the woman complimented me on how well I was doing. I went to the bathroom to take a shower so that I could get ready for the party. Over the next several hours, we worked on getting ready for the party. I never realized before that day how long it takes for women to get ready. Eventually we were ready and I met Peyton downstairs in my costume. As I came down the steps, I immediately noticed how beautiful Peyton looked in his Dorothy costume. The makeup lady took some pictures of us before leaving, then we left for the party. When we got to the house, Dylan opened the door wearing a scarecrow costume. He told us how good we looked and took us over to greet his moms. They were dressed as the Wicked Witch and the Wizard and they complimented us on our costumes. They also seemed surprised that I made such an attractive woman and joked that I had been wasting all these years as a man and that pretty soon they might not be the only lesbian couple on the block. Soon the guests began to arrive and they would all compliment us on our costumes. Unlike the day before, everyone here knew I was a man, so I felt more comfortable not having to pretend I was a real woman. Dressed as I was, however, I spent more time with the other women at the party than with the men. Even though they knew I wasn't really a woman, I could still spot most of the guys checking me out. The women treated me as one of the moms and I soon felt like part of the group. They would occasionally joke with me though that I should dance with some of the guys or that one of the guys at the party liked me. Peyton was having a good time with Dylan and the other kids and spent most of the night on the dance floor. As the night went on, I began to get pretty drunk and had to sit down for a while. As I sat looking around the room, a guy sat down next to me and started talking to me. There was something familiar about this guy, but I couldn't place who he was. Eventually, I realized that it was the pizza guy and I could also tell he didn't know I was really a man. Soon he was on top of me and had his lips on mine, and his hands all over my body. He was much bigger than I was and I struggled to push him off. I began to panic as his hands found their way up my bare thigh and he made a move to remove my panties. Luckily, I was rescued by one of the guys at the party who told the guy that I was his wife. The pizza guy apologized and hurried away. I recognized the guy who saved me as one of Dylan's parents' friends, Mitch. He was openly gay, but was not the stereotypical gay guy that you would see in the movies. On the surface one would think he was straight. He played football in college and owned a construction business. "Thanks," I said, relieved. "No problem," Mitch responded. "I could tell you needed a hand." "How did it feel being kissed by a guy?" "Horrible," I answered, fixing my dress. "I hope I never have to go through something like that again." "I can tell why a lot of women think guys are jerks." "I feel the same way sometimes," he replied, laughing. "My last boyfriend was a real shithead." "Listen, I know you're straight and that this will probably be the only time you dress as a woman, but do you mind if we hang out for the rest of the party? It sucks being at a party alone." "Sure," I answered, then added jokingly, "as long as you don't try to kiss me." "Don't worry," he said once again, laughing, "you're not my type anyway." We spent the night talking and became pretty good friends. We were both big Laker fans and we agreed to hang out sometime and watch a game. Mitch found a new boyfriend a few months later and we would occasionally get together for couples nights when Ella was in town. Soon it was getting late and the party was wrapping up. Mitch said goodbye and left on his motorcycle. I went back to the main room and found Dylan and Peyton with Dylan's parents. Luckily, none of them saw me with Mitch, so they didn't joke with me about him. We said our goodbyes and went home. Too tired to change back to a man, I put on a nightgown and fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. The next day I woke up with a pounding headache and saw Ella staring down at me at the side of the bed. She got me something for my hangover and asked me how everything went. I told her almost everything, except for the part about the pizza guy and Mitch. She was about to help me change when Peyton came into the room. Peyton was very nervous and eventually told us that he finally felt comfortable telling us that he wanted to transition into a girl full-time after realizing that he now had my support. We told him we would support him with his decision, but to make sure that this was what he really wanted first. After meeting with doctors and counselors, Peyton began his transition into a girl. By the time he was a teenager, he had developed just like the other girls his age, and eventually he had his final operation. After changing all of the paperwork to reflect Peyton as a female, we enrolled her in the same high school Dylan went to. Peyton became a cheerleader and Dylan became the quarterback on the football team. They continued dating through high school, and next week is their senior prom. Peyton is excited to go wear her prom dress and hopes she is voted prom queen. She is very popular at school and is respected by her fellow students. She is very smart like her mother and will be attending UCLA in the fall. While I never dressed as a woman again after Halloween, I did learn a lot from the experience, and it allowed me to grow closer to Peyton. I also enrolled in more college courses and eventually earned my degree. I have since taken a more active role in my father's company and have even signed a few artists with Peyton's help. Most of them were young male singers that Peyton had a crush on, but I also signed some artists that I liked. Each day I remember what my father taught me, and as I pass my father's picture in the lobby at work, I only pray that he is proud of the father I have become.